Breaking news right now, Chad Daybell is back in an Idaho courtroom to address guidelines in his upcoming murder trial. And just moments ago, the judge ruling cameras will be allowed in court next March. Daybell is charged with conspiracy to commit murder in the deaths of his first wife and his second wife's two youngest children in an alleged and bizarre doomsday plot. The prosecution won that argument against Daybell's second wife, Lori Vallow, during her explosive trial that gripped the nation. That happened back in May. You probably remember. Vallow was convicted of the same crime. She was sentenced to life in prison. Chad Daybell could face the death penalty. It's one of several motions being discussed in court right now. So here now to talk more is trial attorney and legal analyst Misty Marris. Misty, thank you so much for your time. So let's just start with the death penalty. That's, probably the biggest thing here. Chad Daybell says he shouldn't receive the death penalty because he is, quote, less culpable than Lori Vallow Daybell. So she received a life sentence. Is the judge likely to agree with Daybell's lawyer's arguments?
Yeah, this is quite the case. And we covered Lori Daybell's trial gavel to gavel. So we know what the facts are going to be. We know what a lot of the evidence is going to be. As far as this death penalty argument, this filing was a real bombshell. This filing says that Lori Vallow was the master manipulator, that Chad Daybell, quote, did what my wife told me to do. We now know that this is going to be his defense. In order for the death penalty to be at play, there has to be what's called an aggravating factor. And this argument that he was more of a passive participant in this conspiracy, where Vallow was actually the mastermind, that's how he's trying to walk away from that aggravating factor. If I had to guess, I think the judge will likely say, okay, prosecution, you can go for the death penalty, but ultimately, would the jury convict? It might be up to them when it comes to it.
All right, so Misty, Daybell and his lawyers wanted cameras in the courtroom. Prosecutors did not. A judge has already ruled that cameras will be allowed inside. But what was the logic behind the prosecution's argument?
The prosecution thought that it would be potentially inflammatory for juries, for witnesses. They were concerned about an unbiased jury, as well as the protection of those witnesses who are going to be a part of this highly, highly publicized trial. That was why the prosecution was adverse. Funny enough, we usually see the arguments the opposite way, and we cover these cases all the time together. It's generally the defense that raises this argument to keep cameras out of the courtroom due to potential media exposure and bias. So this was really flipped on its head from that perspective. But the court, as we saw, we watched a lot of Lori Vallow's trial as well. The court said, we're going to have cameras in the courtroom. However, there's going to be parameters and there's going to be some limitations to what is actually aired.
Yeah, and that's why I really wanted to touch on that with you, Misty, because I was surprised because, again, it's usually the opposite way. Yes. That was kind of surprising here. Before we let you go, how much is Lori Daybell's, conviction and sentence for the murders of her two youngest kids likely to impact what happens in Chad's case?
It is actually a huge impact. And by the way, I had this prediction. I said, when is one of them going to flip on the other one? And that's what it looks like Chad Daybell's defense is going to focus on. And again, we're learning that through the motion practice relating to the death penalty. But now Chad Daybell has had the benefit of seeing how Lori Vallow's trial unfolded. Much of the evidence is going to be the same. Many of the witnesses are going to be the same. His team now has the ability to tailor his defense to Lori Vallow's trial. And you know what? We're already seeing it happening again in those papers relating to the death penalty. What we saw was testimony from Lori Vallow's trial being quoted. So it is certainly going to be a big part of the case moving forward.
Absolutely. One to watch. Trial attorney, legal analyst Misty Marris, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.